All right, welcome to this virtual edition of Leadership Day, Leaders 411 with the Charleston Police Department. We got Officer Harvel here. I believe, Officer Harvel, I'd love to hear you tell us a little bit about yourself. I think you were involved last year when the cadets were actually on site. But just tell us a little bit about what your background is and what you do for the CPD.
Absolutely, sir. So my name's Joseph Harvel. I'm a sergeant with the City of Charleston Police Department. Started out in 2008, Citadel grad from Palmetto Battery, and graduated, I think, the first week of May, and about 7 days later was employed with the City of Charleston. Started out, kicked it off with them June 2nd of '08. Been with them ever since, going on 13 years now with the City of Charleston. In my tenure, I've been assigned to Team 3, which are James and Johns Island District, when I graduated from the academy. Spent a little under a year out on the road and operating under flex shift, as kind of a flexible shift assignment, so to speak, with them. And then moved over to the Power Squad, spent quite a few years over there. You'll speak with Officer Villeneuv here in a little bit. We were partnered up during that time. That was kind of a proactive policing unit, so to speak, for that district. Anytime we had major crime spikes or whatnot, we would kind of tailor and suit our patrol needs to that. Worked up to district investigations in Team 3 and then ultimately to central investigations as a detective. I spent, I think, 3 years with Special Victims Unit, and then ultimately moved over to the violent crime side of things and went and served as a task force officer with the local SSRA Charleston as a FBI task force officer as a City of Charleston detective with them. Did that for a period of time and then was promoted in 2018 to sergeant, and did a short stint on the road as a sergeant of a patrol squad of about 8 people. And then I think it was about June of last year, assigned over the training division. Collateral duty of mine for a long time has been a firearms instructor and instructor of all sorts of things. Taught 2 federal grant programs, one on counterterrorism interviewing techniques, another one on elder abuse populations, vulnerable adults. I've run the gamut. Firearms has been my one consistent thing I've done. Certified in Lethia Range Master, carbine firearms instructor, AR-15, pistol, shotgun, you name it. So brought that over to the training department. I've been over here ever since. I don't know how much you want me to delve into the training aspects of it, but I can certainly shoot to that, Ted, if you want.
First of all, that's a lot of things in a short period of time, which is probably one of the neat things about being a police officer. And it's very cool also that you're a Palmetto Battery graduate of the Citadel. So you have a unique connection between where these cadets are sitting today, in this virtual class space, very unusual year for the Citadel, of course, and then what they're about to step into, whether it's police or not, whatever it is. This class is designed essentially to give them a feel for the fact that what they have learned at the Citadel translates and applies to the work that they do in the real world. So I would just ask you that, given your background as a Citadel graduate, what did you learn specifically at the Citadel that has applied and doesn't apply? Sort of how did that transition go for you? Think of yourself in the shoes of those senior cadets right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So the model of what the Citadel does as far as leadership and everything else, it segues right into, this line of work in law enforcement. And advanced education, what the Citadel brings to you, I think the Citadel as a whole does a really good job of not only focusing on whatever your specific major and minors might be, but also it gives you a well-rounded education. I was not a history major or an English major, but I had that background, those communication skills, those requirements that I'm sure they still have today, that allows you to go out and, so to speak, be able to build a rapport, have a conversation with lots of people that you're going to encounter day in, day out as a patrol officer and as a law enforcement officer, whatever you happen to be doing, to really be able to communicate with them, build that rapport, get to know somebody in a short period of time, and work through problems. Secondly, kind of dovetailing from the communication aspect and rapport building is obviously all the things as far as task management, challenging obstacles that you might deal with the Citadel. That's what we do as police officers. We consistently, if you're on patrol day in, day out, you're going to interact and deal with people in times of crisis. And it may not be a crisis that we would look at and say, okay, this is, major incident or a critical issue. It might be. A simple squabble with a neighbor. But you have to be able to go out there, talk to that person, build that rapport, 10 to 15 minutes, work through their problem, figure out how you can try to get that win-win. And then sometimes inevitably you may not have that win-win situation. So ultimately you have to, create that understanding and explanation to them as to why not you might be able to do something or help them out with whatever they need. Same thing as being a detective. It's, there's a lot of different expectations as far as what people think police officers can and can't do, detectives, so forth, special units. And it creates a little bit of misunderstanding. I think one of the greatest things that I took away from the Citadel is being able to work through those problems, communicate, sell what it is that we do day in, day out, and leave people with a good feeling about our interaction.
Yeah, sure. So, something I don't understand, just a personal question, is you get promoted to sergeant. Is that a separate designation than detective? Detective's not a rank, it's a
So
designation?
technically, like you would see with NYPD, detective grade would be, I think, as they term it, a step above sergeant, but below lieutenant grade. It differs. It's a moving target. For us within the city of Charleston, I was previously a patrol officer, probationary before that, patrol officer, then senior patrol officer. That's a rank progression. Then master patrol officer, I was a detective and task force officer with the FBI, and then ultimately promoted to sergeant. When you're a detective, out of courtesy, we have sergeants that are admins there. They still work and function as detectives, but we refer to them as detective sergeants.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of carry two titles with the rank there, so to speak.
Sure, that makes sense. And then something else is very interesting. I understand from your recruiting division that a lot of folks, Charleston PD is looked at as such a great screening and training unit that you end up giving up 12 to 15 officers a year to the federal agencies. But what surprised me to hear you say is that you got to stay here in Charleston as a police officer and still be a liaison and work directly with the FBI. What was that like?
It was a very cool gig. So the premise of what I was doing with the Charleston RA with the FBI was they've got their agents. They had 4 agents in my office that were full-time agents assigned to the violent crime unit. Violent crimes for them is anything involving persons, gang activity, sometimes, something with a terrorist nexus. Usually that was Joint Terrorism Task Force that would handle that. But predominantly gang activity. If you had, certain types of assaults that occurred outside in foreign waters, say for instance on a cruise ship or on an aircraft, we'd handle those too. Murder for hires, I handled a couple of those cases. Really a fascinating experience. But it was myself and a couple other agency representatives from around the Low Country. We worked together, and that old saying goes, teamwork makes dream work.
Yeah.
If I had a TFO that worked with me from North Charleston. He and I were basically partners. If he had to run down to Charleston, I had that authority. We had, federal powers, so to speak, because we are deputized, but we could basically work amongst each other's jurisdictions and further the investigation. And it went a lot easier in deconflicting everything that we were doing.
Yeah.
Predominantly what we worked on was violent crime cases or homicides stemming from gang activity and or narcotics activity. So that portion of time that I was over there, we operated under pretty much like an undercover surveillance capacity.
Yeah.
We utilize UCs to do most of our work for us, but we still acted as our own takedown units, surveillance, and so forth. So it was a lot of fun. It definitely puts you in some interesting spots. At the same time too, it's not as glamorous as you might imagine on television when you've been sitting there 18 hours staring at the same property or vehicle or whatever it happens to be, but definitely a eye-opener as far as, all the steps that you must take, all the legal ramifications when you're working a major wiretap warrant or anything like that. There's a lot of moving parts. It's not necessarily as simple as people might think, and it takes a lot of exhausted efforts from a lot of people in order to accomplish, hardening up a case to present it to the U.S. Attorney's Office when you bring something like that forward. So very fascinating work.
That is just fascinating. When it appeals to me, I joined the service because I wanted my days to be different, and the things that I get to hear it's probably a good thing a police recruiter didn't get a hold of me in college because I'd be a police officer. I think it's fascinating. Well, you have a unique perspective. What do you wish you knew then that you know now? What could you tell these senior cadets that, man, as you start thinking about building a life, beyond, the Citadel is very good at giving you the 24-hour cadet schedule and telling you how to get out of here and graduate. how do you help them build that vision for what things could be 10 years down the road?
My biggest word of advice I would say is I don't think it's a generational thing. I think it's kind of built in from the Citadel. You know, you have that various class leadership from freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, in your senior rank and file there. But, you know, graduating from the Citadel, you want to constantly, what's next? Where am I going? What have I done? Where am I at? How can I progress and keep pushing? And in that, in your career, you're going to find certain people that, you know, you along the, you know, whatever position you find yourself in, you work consistently well together and you kind of build up a team and you progress in that manner. That is important. So one, the aspect of that camaraderie that you build with the folks that you work with is huge, particularly when you get in a more specialized unit. It is paramount in knowing who you're working with, knowing the ins and outs, and you can have, you know, a great rapport, great relationship in that you guys are in sync all the time. Two, when you get to more administrative positions like where I'm at, you know, you'll get to speak with SPO Villeneuv here in a little bit. Fantastic worker. We have worked together in various capacities for a long time over our careers. That's been huge because, you know, we're one step ahead of each other in most cases on things like that. Biggest word of advice, though, I would say is that I've always pushed to want to strive for what's next. A little bit of patience goes a long way. And I would say what I found was very important is that it's great to jump to the next step, but only do so when you feel like you have mastered or exhausted every effort that you can in whatever step that you're in. So if that's patrol and you have a good comfort level with it and you have a good grasp of it and you want to better yourself in a more advanced position within patrol, great. But you need to be at that level to where you aren't, you know, thrown out of the pot, so to speak, and into the fire.
Yeah.
As a detective, when I was in Special Victims Unit, I spent a long time over there, 3 years. I mean, you're dealing with a lot of tense types cases. I know a lot of people have done more, but I wanted something different. I wanted that task force spot, so I had to work for it. And I knew by doing so, it was, you know, work on your interviewing skills, work on, you know, getting out and beating the bush and talking to people and trying to generate leads when you might not have anything there. And once you've kind of mastered that, then you can segue elsewhere and try to go on to new opportunities, so to speak. So patience goes a long way in this line of work. I think in 12 years I've done very well, and I wouldn't change a thing. I don't think I would. You know, we can always reflect back and say, oh, maybe I should have done this differently or something like that. But all in all, I think it's been a good ride so far.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for the time. It's really cool to speak to a Citadel alum who is here serving in Charleston. And you know, if you want to pass the mic, so to speak, to SPO Villeneuv,
Absolutely.
you can jump in. All right, great chatting with you. Thank you.
Good talking with you, sir. Here he is.
Hey, good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Hello there. How are you?
Hey, doing well, sir. How are you?
Good. Well, I'll welcome
Good.
you as well. This is our virtual leadership day, LDRS 411 class for Citadel seniors, and we'll just kick it right off with give us a little bit of background on where you're from and what you're about here at the CPD.
Yes, sir. So I'm from Northern Maryland, right on the Maryland-Pennsylvania line, not far from Gettysburg, just south of Gettysburg. Came down to Charleston for the Citadel. Yeah, I was a criminal justice major at the Citadel. Served in a few different roles at the Citadel, may better relate to everyone there, or that some of the cadets can relate. I was the 2nd Battalion clerk. I was regimental clerk, regimental sergeant major, and I was the first sergeant for the Summerall Guards while I was there. Graduated from school and then immediately was hired at CPD.
What year? Sorry.
2010. I'm sorry, 2010. Came down. My wife is from Charleston. I met her while I was at school, so ended up staying. Ended up keeping me here, which I can't complain. I could be elsewhere. There's a lot worse places to be than Charleston, so I'm happy to be here. Started with CPD, again, right out of school. I attended the academy that summer. I was conducted patrol training, my patrol training phase in Team 4, which is West Ashley. I was released to independent duty onto James Island, which is Team 3. I spent about a year on patrol, which isn't very long. A lot of proactive work on my end led to selection to our proactive street crimes unit, which was Power Shift is the name of the unit at the time. I served in that capacity for about 5 years, at which time I moved to district investigations. So I handled all property crime investigations or municipal violation investigations on James Island. From there, I moved to our full-time SWAT team. I served in that role for about a year when the unit was stood up following the law enforcement ambush in Dallas, Texas. That unit was stood up at the department. I was selected to that unit, served in that capacity for about a year, a little bit longer than a year. And I was selected as a task force officer with the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. So I served as a task force officer with the ATF for about a year. And now I'm currently assigned to the Office of Professional Development and Training as a primary instructor for the department. Currently.
Yeah, so wait, you're telling me the Citadel is now responsible for like a lot of the training at the Citadel Police Department?
Yes, so it's funny you say that. I think everyone in the hierarchy at the training department has an affiliation with the Citadel, either through an undergrad or master's.
Wow.
Currently, our entire chain of command.
Man, we gotta start turning the police department sign behind you, Bulldog Blue here, I guess.
Absolutely, yes, sir. So on the auxiliary side, I'm sure which cadets would like to hear about, at least when I participated in the leadership days in the past, a lot of emphasis is on the SWAT experience. Yeah. So I've spent, or I became eligible for the team in 2013. I made the team when I tried out, and I've held a position on the team for a little over 7 years now. Mm-hmm. My auxiliary assignments on the SWAT team, I've done everything from my initial responsibilities as a containment or perimeter to an entry team member. I'm cross-trained in breaching, both manual and mechanical breaching. My current assignment is that of the sniper team as the senior member of our sniper team on the team. Also served in a brief capacity when our leadership roles changed out as the assistant team leader for about 6 months. Mm-hmm. Which I was pretty young to do so. To be selected, it was a great honor to be able to have that position for the time that I did. So I do that as an auxiliary role here at the department, with my primary role being an instructor for the agency, primary instructor.
Sure. Well, your enthusiasm for the job and your love of both the Citadel and the police department come through immediately. You know, if you had to, first of all, every cadet watching this is going to want to know, where did you meet your wife? So you got to answer that question. And then
yes,
they're all looking, you know. And then the next question is, after you answer that one, is, you know, think of yourself sitting in their shoes. Seniors, third are going to contract in the military. Maybe another third or more know what they're doing, and there are some that don't. You know, they're just kind of. This is an unusual time with the pandemic and everything. What advice would you have for them based on what you've seen yourself, what you've seen in your classmates? 10 years out. What should they be thinking about?
Absolutely. So I did meet my wife downtown. She was an athlete at Presbyterian College, but she's from Charleston, so she was home. So I got lucky there. And she ended up keeping me here. So yeah, it was lucky for me. So best piece of advice for students, and it's funny that I end up running into, the Citadel's very interesting in that it seems like we cross paths, either my classmates or former cadets that I knew at the Citadel, either a year above or a few years above or below, to where I'm working with a lot of graduates that have either done military service direct out of college and have since left the military and now work at CPD, or those mentees that I had as I was a senior cadet now work alongside me as well. A characteristic that I would recommend is pretty simple, and it should resonate with everyone, is to be a winner in everything you do. So with the mindset of being a winner and disciplined in your area of interest will lead to unlimited possibilities here at the department. And I think that's in general in life as well. To absolutely have discipline. I'm a big Jocko follower. I'm sure you're familiar. So I wish, if I could go back and talk to myself as a cadet, I would absolutely recommend waking up at 4:15 and getting after it, getting my schoolwork done. There's no excuse for not having an above 3.5 GPA and above a 300 APFT score while you're at the Citadel. It's your full-time job. I wish I could go back and really discipline myself into that, because that just carries over tremendously into everything you do once you leave, that discipline or that form of discipline.
That's so true. That's so true. I see some of the cadets or some of the alumni, and they lose that edge that they had at the Citadel. My supervisor says it's sleep, solitude, physical exercise, motion, and nutrition are the 4 pillars of good discipline, self-discipline. Right? I totally agree with that. So
absolutely, all things you can control as an individual that you make that choice to be able to control. Absolutely. And to say that, I've had a lot of interest in the past of talking about opportunities. I know Sergeant Harvel and I, we've both had opportunities to serve on federal task force which is a pretty sought after position. There's only one per federal agency at the department. And again, the sky is the limit. The amount of effort and discipline you put into your work here opens up all the doors to whatever you'd like to do. So I don't want anyone to feel that I can speak specifically for CPD, that there's a fear of being stuck on patrol, so to speak. So we hear that a lot with new hires or cadets. Like, I just don't want to feel, I want to do more than that. And that ball is absolutely in your court. I've had the opportunity to attend well over 50 outside training courses, both on the federal side, everything from tactical maritime operations and shipboarding to FBI sniper schools to hostage rescue courses with the FBI, vehicle CQB tactics, shooting into live vehicles with the ATF. Anything and everything under the sun I've had the opportunity to do, just based on the drive and willingness to do it. Yeah. So those opportunities are for everyone there. It's nothing to me specific or to anyone here specific, but if you put in the effort, you have, or you act within law, policy, and ethics here at the department, you have integrity, a strong work ethic, and a good reputation, really the sky's the limit. So I would like to press that. Because a lot of students also ask, like, hey, why not go federal? Like, what's the downside of,
right.
And there are a lot of good, aspirations to be able to go to a federal agency, career-oriented aspirations, and I would support it 100%. But to be 100% honest, I've been there, I've worked with the ATF firsthand. It is a little bit more tiered in doing anything specific other than the special agent role. As far as case assignment and investigation, it's a little bit more difficult to get those slots. Not that that should be a deterrent, but the main deterrent for me is just the moving. My wife's from downtown. We have 2 kids now, so I'm a little, I'm pretty solidified here in Charleston, and I can't complain with some of my peers that end up in Minneapolis or, on the Texas-Mexico border. Granted, they love their job, but they're kind of hating life a little bit based on their duty assignment. So I'm sure you can relate, sir. I'm sure you've been there.
10 years active duty. I'm in the reserves now, and man, I'm over it. It's,
absolutely.
It's a young man's game. So I told your recruiting officer that scheduled this officer, Terry, I said, it's a good thing you didn't get a hold of me, a few years ago. I'd be in the police department to get all this great training and interaction with federal activity, but to be able to stay here in the topography of Charleston, which I also find a great place to raise children. That's really an incredible opportunity for certain cadets. I think it takes a certain mentality to be a police officer and face that uncertainty and danger. And I'm sure it's very personality driven, but for the right disciplined cadet that can also manage de-escalation and social justice and all those other things, it's a pretty cool job.
Absolutely. We wear a lot of hats, and it takes a lot of exactly what you said, a lot of discipline in a lot of different areas. But when you can get your hands on that and be able to become a student of the game in all those disciplines, you become more well-rounded. And again, that just builds into having more opportunities in every aspect of the department that plays itself well.
Well, listen, I can't thank you enough, both you and Officer Harvel, for the time. It's so neat to hear from an actual, a real live Citadel alumni operating on the police department here in Charleston. That's pretty cool. Before we sign off, is there anything else on your mind that you want to tell these cadets before you sign off?
So the last thing I'll throw out there is to quote Jocko, but get after it every day. Take advantage of every day to become a better version of you, is what I would put out there. If I could go back and tell myself that, I'd started at 18 as opposed to 28, 29, getting a little bit older, but just get after it every day.
That's right. That's great advice.
Hopefully seeing some of them soon.
All right. Sounds good, man. Thanks so much for the time.
Right, sir.
And take care out there, all right?
Yes, sir. You too. Take care.
Talk to you later. Bye.